Hey.
Thank you. Hey, all right, everybody. My name is Melissa C. I'm a recovered compulsive overeater. I live in New York and really happy to be here. I've been away a little bit and happy to be back. So I was asked tonight by a couple of people to share like a little bit of my story before we jump into a vision for you. I was asked for a little background, and somebody, I've been asked specifically for pictures and weight loss, and I haven't shared the pictures in a while, and so I'm going to share it, and then I'll jump into the topic. So just give me a moment. Here we go. It's funny, the screen's changed. Okay, so I'm going to just share my screen. Hopefully it comes up. Okay, so my experience with this disease was in morbid obesity. At my top weight, I was over 300 pounds. Someone asked me, how much weight have you lost? I've lost over 160 pounds. This was me when my daughter was first born. She's 23 now, and this was me as she got a little bit older. I thought having a baby, I was going to lose weight. I thought when you get everything you want, shouldn't your weight come off? And that's not my experience. This is me continuing the disease of compulsive overeating and experiencing morbid obesity. In this picture in the red, I always say I was having a party in my house that day. Like my house was a mess and I was a mess. And I couldn't stand living inside my skin anymore. That's really what it felt like. In the green, I was on vacation. I was actually abstinent. I was pretty close to not being abstinent. I lost my abstinence on that vacation. Um, and then, these are side by sides. I always like to show side by sides now. I kind of changed my pictures up. Yeah, this is me, my husband, my daughter, and this is me and my daughter now. And This is me and my sister, my sister-in-laws. Drink in hand. I always had food. I always had to drink a lot and eat a lot to get through family functions. People that loved me the most, I somehow felt like bothered by the most. And I consumed a lot to somehow stomach the ability to live in close proximity to people who actually loved me. Like, how crazy is that? And these are more recent pictures. Yeah, well, no, this is me. I was actually recovered in this picture. This is me and my mom. I was recovered. My body hadn't caught up yet, but my face, I could see it. The way that I felt in the picture before, where I couldn't stand to be with the people who loved me anymore, I did not feel that way in this picture. And I remembered how incredible that was to be at a social gathering. In fact, I was paying for this social gathering and and I was providing food and alcohol for people and I wasn't eating it and I could care less. I was so in love with the people that were there. And this is a little more recent. This was at one of my nephew's wedding, me and my mom, and uh, and these are more, other family event pictures. This is me and my sister and my mother. This is me and my brother. More recently, we took a trip to Florida to clean out my mother's apartment to prepare it for her to be moved to a facility. And this is me when my son was a baby. I could barely put my arms around him. I was in so much agony. I was so sad and so upset during this time because I wanted him more than anything. We had lost a child in between our two children, and I was so dying for this little baby, and I could not enjoy him. I couldn't hold him comfortably, and I couldn't keep up with him. He was so active, and I was miserable about that. I was just miserable. And these are more side by sides. This was me when he was a baby, me when he was in middle school, and a little more recent, same kid. Um, and this is me. This is me. I share every one of those dresses fits me. I go in my closet. That's just miraculous. I go in my closet year after year after year. It's been over 10 years now, and everything there fits me. I never have to worry about that anymore. These are more side by side family photos. Um, and this is me and my husband. This is, it's funny. We're going to talk about vision for you. This is the new vision. We do things that I like to do because food's not my master anymore. I like concerts. I like music festivals. I love to dance. I love to be outside. Um, I thought I loved restaurants. Turns out I don't like restaurants. Food told me I liked restaurants. Restaurants are boring if you're abstinent and you're eating in agreement with your food plan. Um, and these are some of my OA sisters. These are some of the people I know and love that this is my vision. This is what I get to do. I get to go to, this is the OA birthday party. If you've never been, get there, go. If you haven't been in an OA retreat, there's the Region 6 one that's coming up, and the OA birthday party. We get together, we get to be together and just have fun, right? I'm laughing and smiling at my sister, that we enjoy this recovered life. I don't know what happened in that picture, but it got wonky and turned upside down. I'll have to fix that. Got all stretched out and weird, but these are other people I know and love in this program. Some more people that from this fellowship. I've had an incredible experience being a sponsor. These women become my dear sisters and friends. And there's Kelly L. You're upside down with me. I don't know what's going on there, but we're upside down. We had a great time together. We were not upside down there. And this is that this is another good friend, right? Here's my dear friend. We do retreats together. I've given big book workshops with him. We've gone and traveled to different states and places together. And these are other friends. And that's the beautiful life I get to share. I get to live and I get to share. And I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. That's the vision, right? That's what it looks like to experience recovery for me. So I'm going to jump into the chapter, and on page 151, it says, for most normal folks, drinking meant conviviality, companionship, and colorful imagination. It means release from boredom, from care, boredom, and worry. It's joyous intimacy with friends and a feeling that life is good. That's what food does for normal people, right? But not so with us. No, not in those last days of heavy drinking, it says. And for me, heavy eating. The old pleasures were gone. They were but distant memories, and never could we recapture the great moments of the past. So, what that paragraph tells me is normal people don't just eat for nutrition. Normal people eat for fun, they eat for intimacy, for release from boredom, worry, and care. They eat for entertainment, for recreation. And what I came to discover as part of my step one realization is I can't do that with food, that I cannot treat food like normal people do. Eating for me can't be an event. I cannot engage in recreational eating. Normal people hang out at the dinner table. They can enjoy casual eating, right? And I'm thinking about like cocktail parties and cocktail hours and parties and happy hours and the ways that normal people socialize with food. And what I've noticed in those gatherings is the food is kind of like the background music for them. They're enjoying the event and they're eating, and it's like sort of just the music in the background. And they can have a few bites and they can still hear the conversation, right? But that's not the way that I've experienced food when I'm eating alcoholically. Food does not wind up enhancing the gathering. What happens is that background music of the food becomes the only thing I hear. It drowns out every other word. It's like I'm not hearing the people I'm with. All I hear is the chatter in my brain about the food. And sometimes it's like this: can I get some more? I shouldn't have some more. I've had enough. Maybe a little bit more. Maybe I'll, maybe I'll just taste it. Maybe I'll like it, even if I don't take a bite, that's what would be ringing through my head nonstop. And I don't see other people. They either eat it or they don't, and they get on with it, you know? Um, and yeah, it was a sad realization, to be honest. It was a sad realization early on that eating socially, spontaneously eating a dinner out or an ice cream cone from the neighborhood ice cream stand was something I could no longer do. And it wasn't because my sponsor told me I couldn't, but because I had conceded to my innermost self that there was nothing social anymore about my eating. Like I felt the pain of that. And the disease, what it's tried to do is convince me by appealing to my sense of nostalgia. Like it goes right for that sense of nostalgia. So my human desire to feel connection to my culture, right? It can ride on the coattails of it's a holiday. It's a holiday. We always have blank on blank, right? Whatever it is, it's going to attach itself to some sort of an event. And it would make me want to believe that to not eat it, I won't be attached to my friends and family. And my recovery, though, informs me that I can't eat that way. I can't eat for a sense of socialization. It does not actually make me feel more connected to the people I'm with. For me, eating actually becomes antisocial. And, I can't use food for connection and intimacy. I actually disconnect. That's what would happen. I actually disconnect and I don't feel close to the people I'm with. What would happen to me was I would want everybody I'm with to go away so I can get more, right? That's what would happen to me. And I often share this story when I go through this chapter of one of my dear friends, her marriage was ending. And we went out to dinner together. And there was a basket of bread on the table. And I had a piece of the bread. And the rest of the meal, all I heard was negotiation inside my head. Can I get more bread? Should I have another piece? Am I eating too much bread? What if I just haven't? Like, I heard hardly a thing that my friend, whose marriage was ending, she's crying. I heard hardly a word she said. And then the other thing that I recall was one of the thoughts that jumped in my brain while my friend is crying. This is what it looks like when food's your master. While my friend is crying, the thought suddenly came to my mind, I bet she's going to want dessert. That's what I thought about, that I could get dessert. You know, I know I was supposed to be concerned about her crumbling marriage. And in somewhere inside me, I wanted to be that person who was concerned. But food drives out the concern that I feel for other people. And I don't know that people who don't have this disease can relate to that at all. I don't believe they can. And so then what? Right? If this is my truth, how do I connect to people then? How are we going to connect with other humans? What's to become of me? This chapter really could be called, Now What Am I Supposed to Do? Like, now that I'm working these steps, now that I'm recovered, how am I going to live in this world? Right? Page 152, the first paragraph says this. Yes, I'm willing, but am I consigned to a life where I shall be stupid, boring, and glum, like some righteous people I see? I know I must get along with liquor, but how can I? Have you a sufficient substitute? And I have to say, I just came back from being in Las Vegas. And if ever a place that you're going to be that you might wonder, am I going to have to be boring and like self righteous? I don't gamble, really. I don't drink, and I don't do buffets, right? How do you fit in a place like this? Are you going to be like you know, like a Debbie Downer to everybody else that's there. How am I going to fit in with the people I'm with? Um, and there was a time too that I felt, like all the cool moms when my kids were little, all the cool moms hung out, drank wine, and ate chips and salsa. And I was like, how am I going to hang out with these people? I didn't know where I was going to be. How am I going to live without the food? Was there a sufficient substitute? But the truth was, I was willing to do anything to get release because, the disease had me eating till my gums bled. And that didn't sound like very much fun anymore. And I didn't want to eat that way. Um, and so I worked the steps and I found the substitute was a spiritual awakening, and it actually was better. It was far better than chips, salsa, cocktail hours, and like buffets and crazy event dinners. Because for me, how exciting was my life when I was laying on the couch, because that's what I did most of the time. Or, sitting in my parked car in the dark, eating alone wasn't really fun. So what becomes my substitute? Well, it's a relationship with God. That's our substitute. Page 152, the second paragraph says, yes, there's a substitute, and it's vastly more than that. It's a fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous. There you will find release from care, boredom, and worry. Life will mean something at last. And so, I showed you those pictures, right? That's a fellowship in Overeaters Anonymous. That's what it means to be attached and connected to humans. And today my life means something. I have a purpose. I have a mission. Um, I first came to OA, and it wasn't because I was bored or worried or lacked imagination. Like, I didn't think my life was lacking meaning or purpose. I came because really the truth was I came because I was fat and miserable, and I knew what I needed to do, and yet I couldn't do what I needed to do. And that's why I came here, because I was like, I have all the information in the world, and somehow I can't put it in motion. What is wrong with me? And that's why I came here, and I remembered putting down the food and feeling lonely. I did feel lonely, and I felt unsure. How am I going to go away on a vacation? How am I going to hang out with my friends? And, who was I going to be? And I actually found out life is a lot more enjoyable when food is not your master, that you actually find out what it is that you like to do. You actually get to find out the things that you enjoy, that you truly deep down inside enjoy. And I found out that I was going to be useful. That was a beautiful thing that I found. And I was going to give rather than take, that I was going to share the recovery I found. And I know most people that I've worked with, they reach a certain point in their steps and they want to help others. It becomes like suddenly they're sharing with me, I know this person, and they want me to work, they want me to help them. And even before they're through the steps, it seems to just occur that we have this awakening inside us, and so page 153, the first paragraph says this: how can they arise out of such misery, bad repute, and hopelessness? The practical answer is that since these things have happened among us, they can happen with you, should you wish them above all else and be willing to make use of our experience. We are sure they will come. The age of miracles is still with us. Our own recovery proves that. So, first of all, here I'm told a little bit of a requirement. You have to wish this above all else. You have to want this above everything else. That's really the truth. If somebody says, I'm not sure that I really want this, I can't wish it for you. You have to want this above all else and be willing to make use of our experience, which means you're going to have to follow some directions. You have to want it more than anything, and you have to make use of other people's experiences. You have to take some direction. And those two things in place, the age of miracles is still with us. Our own recovery, my recovery proves that. I always tell people I'm a walking, breathing miracle. I believe that I am a miracle. I really and truly feel this deep down in my heart And this miracle is available for anyone, but like it said, there's two conditions. There's you gotta wish it above all else, meaning you have to want this and put it at the front of your life, not try to fit your life around it. And you have to use experience, and I think that's why we don't water down the course of action. We should never water down the course of action that we took. I cannot make the directions easier than they are, and I can't cut corners. And this recovery that I've been given, freedom from the food and from my broken thinking, relieved of obesity. I've let go, like I said, of more than 160 pounds, and I've lived in a healthy body with a relatively healthy mind most days, um, for years now. And today, if a friend calls me to talk about something sad that's going on in her life, whether she's in program or out of program, there can be any amount of bread or cake or anything on the table, and those things are not getting in the way of me hearing my friend, right? Um, I can go anywhere that any free person can go, and I have more energy and enthusiasm, 55, than I've had in my teens. I really feel more energetic and more enthusiastic. And I would say I've experienced a miracle, and a miracle is this: it's an act of God. And that's what this is all about. This whole thing is about an act of God. The 12 steps, they're a set of directions, a recipe, in a sense, to create a miracle of healing. We actually cook up a miracle. You know, it's an invitation for God to enter our lives and just change us entirely. It's a complete willingness to transform. And I've witnessed this in my own life and in the lives of so many others. And in fact, helping others to experience this miracle is now our mission. That's what it says. Like, now, here's your mission. Um, a vision for you is a direction on how you're going to live now, which is we live the rest of our lives helping others to get well. That's our vision. In the bottom of page 153, all the way to the top of, or bottom of 153 to the bottom of page 154, right? And you could take a look at that. And then I'm going to read this part at the end. It says, his sanity returned, and he thanked God. Selecting a church at random from the directory, he stepped into the booth and lifted the receiver. So I would say, the story here is Bill was in trouble. He was in this town. His business dealings went horribly, it went horrible. He was frightened for himself. He was lonely. He was uncomfortable. And he looked in and he saw people enjoying alcohol, enjoying intimacy, enjoying pleasure, and it looked appealing to him. And he had a thought, maybe I can go in there. Maybe I can, I don't know, maybe I can get away with, maybe I can have a ginger ale. Maybe I can have one or two, maybe, right? And then what happened was sanity returned. And he went and he lifted the receiver. This to me, it tells me it's sane to recoil. That when tempted, the sanest thing we can do when life is getting us worked up, when problems knock on the door, what do? We recoil and we go find someone to help. And this particular story of Bill, it's in sharp contrast from Fred. Fred's story, which is on page 41, he had business dealings that went well. What's the difference between the two of them? The spiritual experience. That's the difference. What happened with Fred is, as I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to mind that it would be nice to have a couple of cocktails with dinner. That was all. Nothing more. I ordered a cocktail and my meal. And we all know that that did not go well for Fred, right? So those are two stories, in contrast. And Bill remained sober, and it actually turned out to be a wonderful thing that his business dealings didn't go well. Here's this: because in his despair, he reached out and wound up as a result meeting Dr. Bob. That's what happened. And to me, this is evidence that I don't really know what's best for me. Right? I would have thought business dealings go south, worst thing in the world. Turns out it wasn't a bad thing after all. In fact, for myself, I found out that some of the things that were plaguing me that I thought were my biggest problems, like one of the things that brought me into Overeaters Anonymous for the last time was I was having panic attacks and I couldn't eat them away. The food stopped working. I used to use the food to quiet down my panic, and I couldn't eat my panic away. And I thought, oh my God, I'm not even able to drive to work anymore. All of a sudden, the drive to work became unbearable. And I thought, this is the worst thing in the world. But actually, my panic attacks that I suffered from at the bottom was actually a gift, because it forced me to finally admit that I was in real trouble, that it wasn't my weight and it wasn't just my eating. There was something really wrong with my thinking. And it was a gift. And actually, would you believe, so was morbid obesity. That was another gift. Because if not for the pain of obesity, I don't know that I would have been as open and willing to form a relationship with that. I needed morbid obesity to convince me. Page 155 describes Bob's predicament now. We're going to talk about Dr. Bob. He was formally able and respected, was then nearing the nadir, the lowest point of alcoholic despair. It was the usual situation at home: in jeopardy, wife ill, children distracted, bills in arrears, and standing damaged. He had a desperate desire to stop, but saw no way out, for he had earnestly tried many avenues of escape. Painfully aware of being somehow abnormal, the man did not fully realize what it meant to be alcoholic. And this is a description of powerlessness and unmanageability. You can have all the painful consequences and a strong desire to stop and still be unable. And that was my truth. I had dangerously high blood pressure and panic attacks, and on my own, I couldn't stop. So the next paragraph, Dr. Bob agrees that no amount of willpower he might muster could stop his drinking for long. We have to come to a point where we realize our willpower is insufficient power. And I would say it's like this: my willpower is really strong and really great until I no longer have it, and then it's nowhere to be found. And it seems to come upon without any warning, and when I need it the most. All of a sudden, no more willpower. So I can't rely on willpower. A spiritual experience was absolutely necessary. And Dr. Bob said that the price was too high. And the things that he had to do to get that spiritual experience, he was afraid. He was afraid of losing his reputation. He was scared that others were going to find out, that actually he'd been practicing medicine while drunk. That was his truth. And so I want to talk for a moment about reputation, because I think this is something, you might not be a doctor who doctored while intoxicated, but chances are, if you're like me, you know something about worshiping reputation. And, a reputation is the beliefs or opinions that are generally held about someone or something. And it's also a widespread belief that someone or something has a particular habit or characteristic. That's what it means to have a reputation, right? A good reputation, people have a widespread favorable belief about you, And so Dr. Bob was more concerned with others' inaccurate beliefs, because he was not worthy of that reputation. He was more concerned with inaccurate beliefs and inaccurate opinions of him. He wanted others to believe that he had honorable characteristics that he knew he didn't actually have. He was a slave to others' opinions. We learned, that it's not what others think of me that's so important. It's really our integrity. That's far more important than the opinions of other people. And my own experience has been being overly concerned with other people's opinions of me. I'd say for years, I was the president of the Melissa C. Public Relations Department. That was my job. I was in charge of PR for me, and never mind that I knew that the business was failing. My business was a bust, right? But I wanted you to believe it, to buy my product, right? Basically, buy my product, like me. So long as you thought I was okay, I could be okay. And the problem with having your reputation be your God, what's the problem with having a reputation as your God? Well, besides the fact that it's a false God, it's not really God. Um, and it offers me nothing. It gives me no protection, what other people think of me. No power. I get no power from a reputation. The other problem is that it's a moving target, right? If my reputation is my God, then my reputation, what other people think about me, is going to change all the time based on the audience, right? I'm going to have one reputation when I'm with one set of people, another reputation, other people are going to have to think another thing of me, another. And so it's a target that I can't even predict. It's always going to be moving based on who else is in my company. And, I can't change my characteristics based on who's with me. When different people arrive on the scene, that I have to be somebody else. Dr. Bob drank again. We know that. And he stopped, though, after. He did stop afterwards. And it says here, he saw that he would have to face his problems squarely, that God might give him mastery. So we don't master our food addiction on our own. By the way, that's the vision. God gives it to us. But first, we have to trust God, and we got a clean house. God gives us mastery, but we have to cooperate. We have to trust him, and we got to clean up. Dr. Bob and Bill, what happened was they went on helping others. They went on helping others together. And that's our vision. Page 157 says this: put him in a private room. We will be down. 2 days later, a future fellow of Alcoholics Anonymous stared glassily at the strangers beside his bed. Who are you fellows, and why the private room? I was always on a ward before, said one of the visitors. We are giving you a treatment for alcoholism. And hopelessness was written large on the man's face as he replied, oh, but that's no use. Nothing would fix me. I'm a goner. The last 3 times I got drunk on the way home from here. I'm afraid to go out the door. I can't understand. And one of the important things that I get from reading this, is how they treated this man. How part of the vision is how we treat addicts that are sick. What did they do? They took care of him. They put him in a private room. If you remember last time, Janet went through the chapter working with others. One of the things that we're told is to be patient with people and remember that they're in, right? So they did, right? And they did not send him out there to sober up on his own. If you're in the hospital, you're given help and support. Somebody told me this, I heard this recently. When someone's in the hospital, they come in and check on you all the time. They don't just leave you in there. They come in, they turn the light on, they check your temperature, they check your vitals, they offer you help. They help you while you're in the hospital. And so when struggling people reach out, we help them. And they talk to him. But he was not cheered up though. Like they didn't just cheer him up. No. Instead, they told him over and over about the problem. We don't tell people that they're going to be all right. When people come to us in pain, We don't give them false hope. Oh, you're going to be fine. Now that you're here in this meeting, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. It's not true. You know, we emphasize the hopelessness and the mental twist. And this is where people begin to identify. They hear themselves in the stories of torment. And he identified and said, yes, that's me, the very image. You fellows know your stuff all right, but I don't see any good it will do. You fellows are somebody. I was once, but I'm nobody now. And what you tell me, I now know more than ever. I can't stop. And at this, what those visitors did, what Bill and Bob did was they actually burst into laughter, you know. And the man, the dad said, like, what is there to laugh about? Damn little to laugh about that I can see. And I think, okay, why were they laughing? You know, I don't think it's because they're sadistic. You know, they weren't laughing at his pain, but they were laughing because, first of all, the guy is seeing them as somebody's now. Like, you know, okay, we don't come in here because we're somebody's. We come in here because we need help, and it's pretty ironic, right? But I think they're also happy. I think they're also laughing because he's taken step one, because he's at that point. He's admitting powerlessness, and it's the starting point. And until that happens, nothing can happen. I say it's like this. It's the sweet spot. I love when I meet people at their sweet spot. The fight is out. They're ready to just, okay, whatever you say. And that's when we can really help people. It's such a beautiful place when people are no longer negotiating, when they're no longer fighting to have their way. And that's what it sounded like for him. He was like, okay, I'm done. You know, and he says here, you know, that, you know, until that happens, nothing can happen. And within a few days, he went from this: I prayed to God on hangover mornings and swore I'd never touch another drop. But by 9 o'clock, I'd be boiled as an owl. And next day, that prospect found him more receptive than he'd been. And he said, you know, he's thinking it over. Maybe you're right. You know, God ought to be able to do anything. Then he added, he shouldn't do much for me when I was trying to fix this booze racket alone. Okay, this is not an independent study. You cannot fix this alone. You cannot get these 12 steps and go off and fix yourself. It doesn't work like that. We can't remain in our recovery alone, and we can't get recovery alone. It requires a fellowship, you know. And so he actually, you know, on the third day, this lawyer gave his life to the care and direction of his creator, and said he was perfectly willing to do anything necessary. So he went pretty quickly from step 1 to 2 to 3. And we're told he never drank again. You know, page 161, the second paragraph says this: being wrecked in the same vessel, being restored and united under one God, with hearts and minds attuned to the welfare of others. The things which mattered so much to some people no longer signify much to them. How could they? And this paragraph clearly defines what it means to have a spiritual awakening. That the things that used to interest me, that the things that used to fulfill me and make me feel excited, they're not the same anymore. You know, and it's something that sets me apart from other people as well. Yes, it's normal. Normal people can eat socially, but normal people don't have to help others in order to survive. They might like it, but they don't have to. And I see this today as a great gift. This was my great gift that I received, because I cannot draw closer to others by breaking bread together. It doesn't work. But I undoubtedly draw closer to others by being of service. And that just doesn't happen for me in the rooms of Overeaters Anonymous. That happens for me in my life. That when I am with, you know, people I know and love, I don't need the food in order to feel close to them. I can actually feel close to them just by being loving and kind to them. The food is not required for intimacy any longer. You know, and it says here, thus we grow and so can you. Though you be but one man with this book in your hand. We believe and hope it contains all you will need to begin. We know what you're thinking. You are saying to yourself, I'm jittery and I'm alone. I couldn't do that. But you can. You really can. You forget that you've just now tapped a source of power greater than yourself. To duplicate with such backing what we have accomplished, it's only a matter of willingness, patience, and labor. So I know for myself when I'm jittery, when I'm nervous, I'm unable to relax. It's because, for me, it's because I'm consumed with the future and I'm consumed with myself. I'm overly consumed with the day that's not today, and I'm concerned with how I'm going to do in that future day. And and I've felt this way both in the food and out of the food. I can feel this way on any bad day. I felt this way over the weekend. I had a jittery day. I am a human being. We are human. Um, but if I live in agreement with my primary purpose, which is to carry the message to the still sick and suffering, I don't need to feel jittery and alone. I might feel jittery for the moment, but I am not alone because I've tapped into this power. And what I do when I'm afraid, I need only turn towards my creator and I'm comforted. And because I've shared with you, this is not an independent study, I often need help getting reacquainted with my creator when I'm in that jittery state. And those that know me well know that I will call and I will say, I am losing my mind over something. I'm losing my crap over this. I need help. And I'm reminded, I'm given direction. And I recoil as if from a hot flame from the food and from the jittery feeling. And I feel a connection with God and I get all the strength I need. It really works. Page 164 says this still. You may say that I will not have the benefit of contact with you who write this book. We cannot be sure. God will determine that. So you must remember that your real reliance is always upon Him. He will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. I love this. God determines who comes in my life and who leaves my life. And ultimately, my reliance is always on God. People are people. I need fellowship, and God provides me with the fellowship I crave. I have found that no matter what problems I've experienced, God always puts people in my life to help me through these hard times. God also provides me with people who I can pass my experience to. It's like an open channel. And how has this happened? Through willingness, through patience, and labor. Willing to be honest, not worshiping my reputation or public approval, right? So when I call that person and I'm honest and I say I'm losing my mind, and by the way, I can't wait for dinner. I ate lunch and I am like climbing the walls. I'm honest. I am one human. Thank you, God. I don't live that way most of the time. But this is the formula through willingness, no longer worshiping my reputation, patient, developing the ability to tolerate the discomfort I feel as I wait. I actually could tolerate, even though I said I'm losing my mind, I actually found I could tolerate it, delaying gratification and allowing life to unfold rather than trying to force the outcome. Labor. This program is work. Working with others, working the steps, working by giving service. But what happens is the work becomes irresistible. It's true. Page 164, our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. We constantly disclose, God will constantly disclose more to you than will disclose more to you. Ask Him in your morning meditation what He can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. but obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. So I would say, you got to make sure that your relationship with God is right. And then great events will come to pass for you and countless others. And this is the great fact. When people say they feel depleted from giving service, I would often say make sure that your channel to God is open. Because if I'm giving too much of myself, I've got it wrong. I'm not giving of myself. I'm giving what I receive, transmitting it like an open, like an open channel. You know, um, you abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past and give freely of what you find. And we shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit. You will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. And so God will reveal what I need to see and what my path is to be. If I ask Him, which means pray, right? Ask is a word for prayer. How can I help others? That's when I pray. My step 11, you know, if I stay close to God, I am promised great events, not just a thin body, not just a normal sized body, not just relief from the food, but great events. I abandon myself to God, meaning I give myself, I offer myself. That's my step 3. I give myself over to God to do with me as He will. I admit my faults, I clear away the wreckage. That's steps 4 through 10, and that's repeated over and over and over. And I give freely, step 12. And this is the path so that I can trudge the road to happy destiny. This word trudging means it's deliberate, it's slow, it's steady, it's not skipping and dancing, it's not a sprint. When I read that, it lets me know that I can live happily through hard times as well. You know, that's my experience. I say when life gets lifing, I've got I've got a design for living that actually works. And I've continued to live a full life in recovery, with loss, with trials, pain, vacations, mom being moved to a facility. And I get to live my life through ups and downs, but I no longer suffer. And with that, I'll pass. Thanks.